Welcome to Take It from the Iron Woman. My name is Susanne Müller, your host and the Iron Woman. This podcast is about empowering yourself and others to make real changes in the world. You will hear from everyday, smart, sophisticated, hip people like you and me. Not everybody has to be an Iron Woman to impress the world. Together, we will learn from the sports and business leaders how you can become a more successful person as an entrepreneur or a leader. It's one step at a time, one day at a time. Take your steps now. Take your big steps now. Join me on this journey to success. Take it from the Iron Woman. We only have special guests, and today we go to Jane King. I know her from TV, also as a friend.
Great to be here with you. I consider myself first an entrepreneur. I have my own business. It's called LilaMax Media. It's named after my kids, Max and Lila. We started the business in January 2014, and I work out of the Nasdaq. The core of the business is providing TV reports to local TV stations around the country. It's part of a syndicated segment in their morning TV newscast. We talk to Seattle and San Francisco and Jacksonville, Florida, and Indianapolis, and they're all over. And we try to focus on the businesses and industries that are important to that part of the country. So the report changes for each station. I've learned a lot about the U.S. and all the different businesses and natural resources and where everything comes from. And then I also do interviews from the Nasdaq for a weekly show. I have 2 weekly shows, one that runs on Newsmax and one that runs on KRON TV in San Francisco. They feature innovative companies because I like to promote entrepreneurs as well. A lot of companies that are starting up and they're in kind of emerging fields like technology and biotech and energy, and just to try to support those entrepreneurs. And I find it really interesting.
How did you become interested in that?
I grew up in a family of self-employed people. My dad was a farmer. My 2 brothers farmed. My oldest brother worked for utility, but then started his own retail business. We've all kind of have this thing in our DNA where we just want to go out and be our own boss. I was always around that. I think also through my farming exposure, I became interested in the markets. I remember even a middle schooler riding with my dad in the pickup truck, and we'd go run errands and he'd listen to the grain markets. And I just I was interested in that whole field, the money. It was kind of exciting to me. And I just really liked economics as well. So I put it all together, came up with my own business in this. That's kind of what led me here.
And you studied economics in that case?
Not so much. Actually, I studied communications in college. I did take some business courses after college, never really got a degree in it because I was around it so much, grasped the concept pretty easily about what makes a stock valuable and supply and demand issues. And I was particularly interested in the commodities and those natural resources, those God-given things that we have in the world, and how people have figured out how to use them to make phones and cars and food. And probably, if I had college to do again, I'd probably major in economics. Well, and I think as much as we try to fight the laws of economics, they all still tend to rule the supply and demand and just the human ingenuity of creating. When you just look around at the world and you see cars and computers and Zoom and all the amazing things that we use, those were entrepreneurs that created those. It's a fascinating story. It's an important part of history.
I'm curious to find out, where does the car come from, or maybe easier, not so much the car, but the cell phone. And it's important these days when you talk about sustainability and climate change, you want to know where all that stuff comes from. Do you think people are that curious or not so much?
I think there is a growing segment of consumers that are very interested in that. And one thing that I've stumbled onto through these interviews that I do is blockchain technology. This was kind of I would never have dreamed. If you would have told me 20 years, you're going to do these, become like somebody in the blockchain world, I've been like, what is that? How is that going to happen? I started meeting these people who were having these blockchain, and I started to understand the technology, which can trace things. The application of it can be, say, there's a recall of spinach. Well, if that is traced on the blockchain from the farm all the way to the store, they can within seconds find out what farm that spinach came from and issue a recall. And it's much more kind of surgical in terms of, we think it came from this county in Southern California. We don't really know, but let's just destroy it all just in case. It's much more surgical about that. And you can find that technology can tell you a lot of things, products in cell phones. It can tell you if things are sustainable, environmentally approved. It can food, even organic. So there's all pharmaceuticals. There's all kinds of industries that technology can apply to. It's still kind of an early technology. I think it'll come around. I think that will really make the whole shopping experience different. And I think there's going to be a day, maybe when my kids are older, that they're going to go, I can't believe that people shopped and bought things and didn't know. They just bought it trusting that somebody said this was organic or from this or that. I think we're going to be able to verify that in the future.
Me as the customer, the consumer, it's a little different than 5-10 years ago.
Yeah, no. And the younger generation really cares about that. And with their food and even their products that they buy, even sneakers. And you're seeing a lot of big changes in industry. Like a lot of the companies are getting rid of fur. And there's all these things, political things that I feel like the younger generation has made a move in business and corporations.
We need more of you, like with provoking ideas and bring stuff up. Why is it important about the climate change? The coffee is involved, or when you bring it to the kind of like my everyday life, people can understand it better. And that's why we need you, maybe not the pure economist, but you can bring a tangible example that people can understand.
I think a lot of people want to know, who made this? Was this made with slave labor, particularly like solar panels coming out of China? That's been a controversial thing lately. There's a lot of issues with coffee in Latin America. And so I think people want to make sure that human beings are treated correctly in the production of this product. And they'll pay more for that as well.
And tell us about when I met you, your TV career. I was always amazed, like we saw you at 6-7 o'clock in the morning. How did you get through those days, like getting up at 2-3 in the morning?
Still getting up at that time. It's crazy. Somehow I got involved in the morning show and I can't get off of it. I get up really early, like 2 a.m. I write, I edit, do report. I'm usually done with the TV stuff around 10:30. And then if I have some interviews to do, I'm usually done 11:30. It's not a super long day. I've kind of learned to embrace that peacefulness of the morning. You never have traffic. You get to see a beautiful snowfall in New York City that's untouched. All these things in the mornings, I wouldn't get to see if I worked 9 to 5.
How do you cope? And you have a family also. How do you cope with like getting up at 2 in the morning, work till 11? When do you sleep?
I usually take a nap in the afternoons and then back to bed around 9-ish. My kids are older now, so they're 12 and 14 now. And when they were little, it would have been really hard. They know now when they come home from school, if the door's shut to mommy's bedroom, you leave her alone. They know. And they know I need to sleep. I don't travel a ton. I do travel a little bit. Now they're old enough that they can make their own breakfast. They can get their way to school. They came to Times Square today by themselves and met me. They're independent. There are sometimes you're tired. You just you don't have too many of those long days in a row. Is what I learned. I have a long day. I can't have another one the next day. I need to catch up on sleep the next day.
It's about managing the time correctly and also setting boundaries. I think if you set yourself up for that, it might be a slower day tomorrow, then it's going to be okay.
I look forward to it. And to be able to it's all about time management, kind of knowing what your body can take, allowing yourself some rest. I knew I had a long day Tuesday. So I know Wednesday I was going to take it a little easy. Did my normal TV thing, came home, cut myself a break, took a longer nap than normal. Then I'm back at it again on Thursday. So it's all about knowing yourself, knowing what routine works and pushing yourself enough to challenge yourself, not so much that drives you crazy.
Very wise word. And I know from our mutual friend, Ross, he says, you and your husband are one of few people who love their job. Tell us a little more about that. And we feel it, right? We feel it. You're like energetic, you're smiling. And
yeah, I do like it still. Mm-hmm. I find it constantly interesting. And it's just, things have changed so much. And I've seen so much evolve over the years. I mean, it's been .com bust and then the financial crisis. And September 11th, I was working on, at the stock exchange. And now we've got the pandemic, which was unbelievably fascinating from an economic point of view. I'm so sad, but I've never seen anything where every person in the world was affected by this and what it did to vaccines, and even people's like behavior, the things that they bought and stocked up on, and what it meant for travel and energy and movie theaters and cruise lines. It just went on. And then it went on to this supply chain and how it was impacted by the pandemic, particularly in Asia. Now I think we're going to deal with the long-term impact of schools that have been closed and kids not getting that youthful experience that they have in previous generations. That's going to have a long-lasting impact. So this pandemic is going to be with us for a generation in one form or another.
It has a huge impact. And then you said it's the whole world.
I've never seen anything like it. And I started doing a lot of interviews on Zoom, of course, during the pandemic. So I was working from home. And I would talk to people in like these strange corners of the world, like Mauritius and Belarus and stuff like that. We're all talking about the pandemic and how we're dealing with it. And are you vaccinated? And are you able to go to a restaurant? It was always this point of conversation that the whole world experienced together. And I don't think there's been anything like that in history.
Or maybe if you talk sports, right? The Olympic just closed. There you have something that you might have in common, but the pandemic is totally different.
It was just the fact that we had this technology, we could communicate globally, talk about the pandemic. We all had this thing in common. Everybody had to live it. Everybody had to wear a mask or get a vaccine or had their life disrupted in some way. Yeah. It's historic. And I think we're going to be dealing with this for a long time. How is work going to look in 15, 20 years? Are we still going to be at the office a few days, at home a few days, at the office full-time, home full-time? I mean, I think people's priorities change. There was a deep psychological shift that took place too.
I read an article today that the percentages of people going back is low. When you look at, for example, restaurants or movie theaters, their percentages are up. And they were like, why? And it's interesting that they say, well, in the movie theater or in the restaurants, you're there 1-2 hours. At work, you're like 8, 9, 10, 12 hours. And it's not the same. They wonder how the workplace will be different. And how many offices do we need? I think you can save some money there. Like it's the real estate then.
You wonder about that, the commercial real estate. I mean, I read stories about, so-and-so bought this, signed a lease in New York and things. And I'm kind of like, well, that's interesting. Like, why? Why would you do that at this point? Because it still seems so uncertain. I think the commute, particularly if people had long, kind of stressful commutes, I imagine we'll have like those days when there's bad weather. They'll probably just be work from home for sure. And it'll probably vary by job and business. Financial firms seem to want people back. Like tech firms are more like work from home. So industries will be different. I don't know how it's all going to shake out.
How is the future going to look? I mean, like the blockchain, the NFT, the cryptocurrency, and what is next?
Blockchain is the technology underneath all cryptocurrencies and NFTs. I think it's going to play an important role. Blockchain has a lot of applications. I mentioned earlier about it can trace a piece of food or an article of clothing. It's really good for like smart ledger systems and things like that. It can't be hacked, or at least I don't know if I want to say can never be hacked. It's very difficult because it's like a group of people contributing to the chain. So you have to figure out how to hack every different, they call it a node in the blockchain. I think that's going to have a lot of applications for a lot of industries. When I look at the cryptocurrency, so that's kind of interesting because they performing great last year, have not been so good this year. I feel like there is a hunger for a non-government controlled currency. And we're seeing some things happen in the world, like governments are seizing bank accounts of people that they don't politically agree with, controlling those and shutting them down. And I think if we see a lot more of that, there's going to be more of a need for people to realize that we need some kind of alternative way of exchanging money that's not ruled by some fiat government. Now, in terms of NFTs in the metaverse, I can see like that being a really big thing. So my kids got virtual reality goggles for Christmas. And they're in there and they don't do it a lot. They're not on it all the time, but enough that I think you could create a business. They're playing games and I can see how companies would advertise. I just recently interviewed a company that will make an NFT of your dog or your pet. Let's say that we have our avatars in the metaverse. Well, they created avatars for your pet. So you can take your pet along with you in the metaverse, which is crazy. Like to think about this, but I could see people wanting to do that. Now, it's such a like strange thing that I feel like it's going to be kids who are like 15 and younger that are going to make that change. There's some really interesting business applications for it too. You can have a meeting in the metaverse with your team members that are all over the world, and you're all like avatars sitting at a table, and they can make it really detailed. You've got a whiteboard and things like that. It seems more interactive.
Yeah.
Like you're really sitting at a table with somebody instead of this kind of flat Zoom experience. That's going to be a really interesting thing to watch. I mean, I remember when the internet, first came around, and I was on there reading newspapers and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, well, shop on here. That's unnecessary. I've got a store. And now people are doing things on the internet that I never imagined. Live talking, like what we're doing. The Web3, I think, will be the next big technological revolution.
If anything, we have to be open with the metaverse or whatever is coming. If you say, no, that's the worst that you can do, the world will kind of like continue without us.
Well, I don't think we're ever going to stop wanting to be around other people. I just think there's an energy that you get when you're out to dinner with friends or at the office or at a sporting event or something like that. What the metaverse and virtual reality gives you is an enhanced version of that. So if you can't make it to a concert, like I feel like it opens a lot of things, experiences that we wouldn't have done. It's got amazing applications for education. You can have a virtual tour of the Louvre if you're an art student, or a virtual surgery where you don't have to actually operate a cadaver or something like that. You can do it virtually and learn that way before you're ready to take. I think education is another big area that we'll see virtual reality in the metaverse grow.
Thank you so much for all your insights. And we're happy to follow you on the Nasdaq. And we hope the market will go up only.
Let's hope so. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
What a cool conversation about blockchain, economy, Nasdaq. I am fascinated. What are you taking away? Take it from the Iron Woman. We have episodes every Monday, every Wednesday. In the month of March, only episodes with women entrepreneurs, women in the sports world. Something you can take away. Thank you so much for your support. We'll check in with you next time. Thank you.